Alright, I wanted to make a quick video on N64 and GameCube range settings. So for anybody that's been gaming for a long time, especially when emulators came out, you'll notice that there was always something called real range involving N64, primarily those emulators. GameCube had the same thing. And I want to explain what that's all about. If you look at a regular controller, by and large, when you're making circles around the entire circumference of the area, it doesn't have any plastic cutouts. It's either going to be a circle, in some cases even a square. And that does generate the shape that you see on your screen to some degree. That plastic denotes your range. Now, on the GameCube controller or 64 controller, that pattern that you're looking at on the screen exists on the actual plastic. So you can't move beyond that unless you ripped apart the controller. And that's kind of where the range comes from. When you have a situation where you're trying to run in a game in an emulator that was designed for any controller, that game is going to intentionally be designed for a range of, let's just call it 128 plus or minus in all four directions. The GameCube controller and the N64 controller were 65% of that because of that plastic. So when you see a game that says use real range, they mean you're using one of those controllers and you have a limiting factor. The plastic's in the way in this case. So we are dealing with that here on the screen as I run this video here. This PlayStation controller has been reduced to match pretty close to the range of the 64, the N64 controller. Now I'm going to go ahead and swap out for a GameCube controller. Okay, now we have a GameCube controller. Now you notice with the GameCube controller, it's almost a perfect match. And the reason for that is I have configured this one in the API tool to be my dominant controller. I'm going to explain that in a minute. But before I do, I want to show you what happens when we use an N64 controller. Okay, this is the N64 controller, but mind you, through the bridge, not direct to the console. And you can see it's a little undershot. There's a reason for that. As I said, my Gamer Pro was configured from my dominant controller of the GameCube. So I'm going to show you how that works inside the API tool and why there is a dominant controller that's necessary. Now, if I had a full range controller in here that wasn't configured, the dot would go considerably outside this circle. The game would still be playable, but there'd be a lot of wasted resolution. So that's kind of why we do this. Let's take a look at the API tool. Okay, inside the API tool, and please mind you that these are the latest versions of the API, the bridge, in the Gamer Pro firmware. And this is a new feature to lock all these things together. So you probably want to get the latest as of 3.15 or greater, or the release that came off shortly after, just so that you're in sync with this video here, because this video is premature in the release. But it will be the next versions that come out, and it won't be too long. Alright, so we're looking at the output of the analog controller. This is the GameCube. And if you notice, it touches the walls just enough to touch the walls. It doesn't go any shorter than that. And the way that works is with this set range tool here. And I'm going to go ahead and restore this to the defaults. So let's do set default values. Now you see that it doesn't quite reach the range of the edges of the view there. The reason for that is this is the default reading of this controller. The plastic is in the way, so you cannot go further than, looks like 34 going left. But let's go ahead and use the suggested values. Now the suggested values are fine, and they were designed for N64 because that's where this originally came about. This will work for the GameCube, but as you can see, we're squashed. We're not a perfect circle anymore. It does find the edges of the screen, but there's a lot of wasted space. This is not configured for GameCube. This is configured for the N64. If I had the N64 connected, you'd see that perfect circle. So if I wanted to set these, I would manually slide these bars over. Now I know that the perfect sweet spot is 95 because I already did this. But as you move these out, you can go ahead and hit the, I'll get that right at 95. If I could do that, there we go. Set current values. And once you click that, then you can test it. And you'll see that is a perfect value there. You don't want to be all the way to the edge. It looks like I go to about 3. You could go a little bit further if you wanted, but the further you go, the more squash effect you're going to get. So those values, 95 plus and minus, are perfect for GameCube. These are the controllers that support that feature. It's the Atari 5200, the GameCube, and the n64. There may be a reason to add some more in the future. We can support up to 16 controllers that way. But the important thing to keep in mind is that these are not individual settings. It's just one setting because of the space on the chip. So to make the curve, it's all in one. So all of these controllers would have the curve. If you didn't want the curve applied, you could uncheck those controllers and then hit Set Selected Controllers. Now only the GameCube would have the curve, the other two wouldn't. Obviously it works with any combination of that. But if you did have all 3 of them checked, then all 3 of them are going to have the curve that you're viewing. And that is the way we had it set in that video, and that's how that works. Once you're done with that, you can just close this menu, and those options are saved on the firmware, so you don't have to do anything further. If you did get lost and you don't know what had happened and it's all kind of messed up, you can always hit this Restore Defaults, and that just puts everything back to the way it was when you purchased it, and you can give it another shot. But there you go. Thanks for watching.